Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for an AdoptUSKids webinar on bringing joy, humor, and hope to the support group experience. I know I need a slice of all three of those things right now. I think we all do. So I appreciate you guys taking the time today. And for all of those who have been impacted by Hurricane Idalia, I hope everybody's doing all right. I hope everybody's communities are recovering and thriving, and just these storms are getting really out of control. So I hope everybody's doing all right. So my name is Britt Cloudsdale. I am the director of the family support team at AdoptUSKids, but I'm not who you are here to see today. I am joined by Barb Clark and Kim Stevens, who are honestly two of my very favorite people to watch train and to train with. And so I'm just really thrilled to be joined by them today. Barb, will you move it to the next slide so they can see your lovely faces, your lovely faces. So yes, Barb Clark is the director of training at Families Rising, formerly known as NACAC, and Kim Stevens is on as an AdoptUSKids consultant today. Again, we're just thrilled to have you here, and we know that you guys have limited amounts of time, and we appreciate you guys spending it with us. Okay, so our goals for this webinar today, we're going to discuss the value that's gained when you imbue and incorporate joy, humor, and hope into your support groups, right? We're also going to give you guidance on how to use humor tactfully in really tough circumstances, right? We want to be careful with the way that we're using humor, but there's a way to use humor in really difficult circumstances that can really relieve stress for everyone. And then ultimately, and of course, we're going to provide concrete strategies to help you reframe negativity and really offer hope to your group participants throughout any experience that they might have. Okay, quickly before we begin, a couple of housekeeping details. First of all, this webinar is being recorded and it is going to be shared with all registrants. It is also going to be posted publicly on the AdoptUSKids website for professionals. So don't feel like you have to scribble everything down really quickly. You will get a copy of the recording, and you'll also get a PDF of all of the slides that we share, okay? You are welcome, and we encourage you to submit your questions via the Q&A tab that's down in the bottom of your control panel. And we also encourage you to engage with panelists and with your other attendees in the chat. So please feel free to type in the chat and talk with everybody. If you have ideas and suggestions, I'm sure your peers would love to hear that. And then we also have a webinar survey that is going to be coming to you via email from AdoptUSKids Evaluation. That is going to be coming to your inbox just shortly after the webinar closes. And we really, really hope that you'll take 5 minutes or so to give us a quick bit of your feedback. We greatly value your feedback, and we genuinely use it to plan out the rest of our content that we're producing for you guys. So please let us know if this met your needs, if it didn't meet your needs. What else would you like to see from us? We want to know. So we hope that you'll do that. And very briefly, just a little bit about AdoptUSKids for those who are less familiar. So we are a national project of the U.S. Children's Bureau, and we have a two-pronged mission. The first part of our mission is to raise public awareness about the need for foster and adoptive families for children in the public child welfare system. And the second part of our mission, the part that some folks are less familiar with, is we are also assist U.S. states, territories, and tribes in anything related to recruitment, engagement, development, and support of foster, adoptive, and kinship families. And that includes, we provide a lot of resources for parent support group leaders like this webinar today. So I'm going to make sure that everybody has in the chat the link to all of the parent support group resources that are available on the AdoptUSKids website. And we're going to be sharing some good resources available throughout the webinar today. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew that AdoptUSKids has tons and tons of resources for you as we get going. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Barb, and I'm going to quit talking.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Britt. Super excited to be back with everybody today. Kim and I love training for AdoptUSKids. So we're going to start off by talking about why is this an important topic? Some might think it's kind of obvious why it's an important topic, but I think one of the big reasons why we need to talk about how to infuse joy and humor and hope into support groups is that historically that's something that we're not really good at in a lot of the groups that we see around the country. And so the other reason is we know that post-adoption, post-placement supports are so important, and support groups are a really good tool for that. And what we have seen and experienced and witnessed is that when there is a support group that is struggling with a lot of negativity and just kind of feels like a bit of a downer, it can kill that support group, right? It is not very fun to keep going to a group that is only full of heavy, hard stuff. And so, so it's really important that anybody leading support groups for our adoptive, foster, and kinship families have some strategies and ideas and tools of how they can infuse more joy and humor and hope into these groups. I remember a group that I knew of in one state that I had been working in. There was like one or two people that were kind of taking over the group and being really, really negative. And I remember one caregiver telling me that they actually would drive past the location where that group was. And if they saw the car of the one person who in particular was super negative there, they would just keep driving and wouldn't go to the group. So that's what happens if we don't get intentional about dealing with the negativity. We will start to have lower numbers. And it also, the rumors spread then, right? I've also heard from many child welfare professionals how they sometimes won't refer their families to come to support groups because they feel like it's just a big whining, venting, griping session. And also something that is common that child welfare professionals can be worried about is that if those support groups turn into complaint sessions about the workers, that also can kill a group and is not a helpful thing. So there's just lots of different reasons why this is important. But the biggest reason is because our families need to feel joy and they need to feel hope, right? When you start to lose sight of both of those things, that's when our families start to go downhill, start to decline. That's when we see more disruptions and dissolutions and just general dissatisfaction with their families. So there's many reasons why it's very important. Those are just a few. I don't know if you want to add any to those, Kim, or maybe I covered them all. Jump in anytime. So, we want to talk a little bit about joy. Joy is what we're going to be talking a lot about today, not a little bit about, right? But what is joy? It is not that joy makes us grateful. It is gratitude that makes us joyful. That's a quote that David Steindl-Rast has said. And, there are some differences between joy and happiness, right? Like happiness is kind of like, I'm at an event and I'm feeling happy because this is a cool event, but joy is something that's kind of more infused in your life and is something that is more of a longer term thing that you're feeling. And even people that maybe don't have like personalities that are optimistic or positive in general, because we all do have different personality styles. There's no doubt about that. And some people tend to be more optimistic than others and that kind of stuff. But even people that have personality traits that maybe are less optimistic than others can still experience joy and there are still ways to infuse joy into their lives. And so it's really important that we look at kind of some of those differences. What we want to start out with here, we want you guys to get ready to type. We want you guys to put in the chat box right now, what brings you joy, right? So everybody start typing things in the chat box. You can put more than one thing, put several things or the most important thing or whatever comes to your head, but start putting in the chat box, what brings you joy? And oh, well, and I was supposed to say, wait to press enter, but you can just do it now. Press enter. I'm seeing a lot. I'm seeing grandchildren, pets, dogs, nature, giving. Oh, smile from a teenager. That's a big one, right? Time with family and friends, laughing, naps. Ooh, that's a good one. Naps, family and friends, clean house, outdoors. Oh, good. Oh, sewing. That's cool. I like that one. All right, let's see. What else do we have? Did I miss any of them? Fall weather. Yeah. Oh, the fall weather is so beautiful around the country. Being outdoors, children. Oh, a bulldog. Lots of good stuff. Faith. I'm seeing a lot of common things. Family and nature family and nature are really common ones here. Concerts, cooking. Oh, good stuff. Really good stuff. Briefly, I'll say, and you guys can keep putting them in there, keep putting them in that chat box. It's just really good to see that kind of stuff. For myself personally, this is me with my youngest son, Zeke. For me, it's the relationships in my life, right? My family relationships, my work relationships, my personal friend relationships. Those kind of things bring me a lot of joy. And so that's definitely the most important for me. My second one is water of just about any kind: lakes, oceans, rivers, pools, natural springs. I love water and being outside in the water. So I should have put outdoor pools, right? Because indoor pools don't do it for me. I mean, that's fun once in a while, but I really like to be outside in water. I love to kayak, things like that. And then another thing is bicycling. I love taking bike rides. So those are a few of the things that bring me joy. Now we're going to see what brings Kim joy.
For me, I think that picture really says it all. That's just one of the humans whose laughter brings me a lot of joy. But like Barb, family is a big thing, and I think that's true for most of us, or many of us. I really struggled with this because there are so many things that do bring me joy, but aha moments, like when you finally figure out, and somebody else talked about a job well done, and someone else talked about getting stuff off your to-do list. Those are the kinds of things that are just like, oh my God, I finally got it. I finally got it. It's so great. And then I'm speaking now as a really kind of old person, but coming to that place of acceptance about my kid who is never going to be everything that I think she could be, about everything that I'm never going to do that I always thought I might like to do, that our political world is in a place that I don't necessarily like to have to think about. But that acceptance for me is the place where we really can start moving forward and let go of, I think of Jacob Marley and Ebenezer Scrooge, let go of the chains from life that have bound me, right? Just don't worry about it. You can't fix it. Just keep moving forward. And if you want to go to the next slide, thanks. And I think that also ties into this whole idea that I have said in the past and finally got rid of that feeling. I'm too, whatever it is, I'm too tired. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm too stressed out to be happy. Well, yeah, you might be all of those things. You're not enjoying the moment, but you still can have joy. You still can transcend whatever is going badly, and you still can have joy. As Barb had said earlier, happiness is something that kind of comes and goes with whatever is happening in the moment, what's going on right now. But joy is really a practice and a behavior, very deliberate, very intentional. And it one of the things about it, and this is why I think that it's so important when we think about trauma and healing, is that also joy, in the same way, it connects through meaning and purpose. Barb was asking about what do I think about support groups, and I couldn't unmute myself soon enough around, when the negativity happens. I have been in Al-Anon, I've been in Alateen, and I have been in support groups post-permanency. And with each one of those types of groups, I have eventually left when it gets to be negative. I don't go places to have a negative experience. I go places to rejuvenate myself, to start feeling a little bit better about the world around me, but also to think more about what am I contributing to my state of mind or my state of feeling right now. And if one of the things that I'm contributing is putting myself in places where people are miserable or when people are just wanting to complain, I can get sucked into that. I don't want to be there. I want to be where joy lives. So we really do have the power to choose joy. And I read I guess it was kind of a long time ago, because everything is a long time ago for me. We were going through a really tough period in our family. I was reading some of Dalai Lama's stuff. And there's one particular book that is Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu talking about and sharing their ideas around joy and laughter. And they kept talking about the fact that you can choose it, even if you're not feeling it. And I realized that one of the things that helped me was to turn up the radio as loud as I could, and to sing whatever crazy song was on the radio, because just the motion of that, the energy of that can sort of lift you up. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting with two friends of mine, and one of them was talking about laughing yoga. And she said, no, it's real easy. Just do this. And she started laughing and said to us, you guys start laughing with me. And before I knew it, all three of us were rolling on the floor, hysterically laughing, which proves for me that even when you're in the most miserable of places, you can trick your body, you can trick your mind, you can trick your heart into feeling joy, even when you think you can't. So shifting that perspective, right? That perspective is so important. And that is really, I think, ultimately what the job of the support group leader is to help our members, our group members, be able to look at things from a different place. I consider myself, my superpower is being able to shift my perspective and to look at things from another place. So even things like, you know, I've heard caregivers come in and I've had the same experience. My kids won't talk to me. I don't know what to do. How come they hate me so much? I don't know what to do. Well, let's think about what's that meaning. Let's think about how we can get behind that. I can remember years ago when one of my kids was a 12 or 13-year-old and stopped talking to me altogether. I started IMing with him. He'd be upstairs in his room and we would have an hour-long conversation by IMing, because he was totally addicted to his phone. He wouldn't speak to me, but he would communicate with me. So we shifted, we reframed, right? My same son never would show me affection in public. But one day I was at the baseball field with my husband and his best friend. These two boys were like, I don't know, 13, 14 years old. You're not supposed to show affection in public. His best friend came walking over, gave his mom a big hug and a kiss, gave his dad a big hug and a kiss. And my husband and I are standing next to each other, and my non-communicative kid looks at me and goes, just the head nod. And the two of us looked at each other and said, did you see that? He just told you he loved you. Yeah, I just saw it. He just told me I love you. It was amazing. But that's what I'm talking about when we're celebrating the small victories, when we're looking at the meaning behind the behavior, when we're trying to find those moments that we can capture that bring us joy and that bring us satisfaction. We have the power to do it. And as leaders, we have the power to help our families look behind what has happened to what it meant.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like when I'm leading groups, that's one of the things that I feel like I do. One of the skills that I use the most is helping families to reframe things, right? They might be sitting and sharing a really hard thing that happened or a hard situation. And in every one of those hard situations, there are positives that we can pull out of it, right? There are positives that we can pull out of it. And sometimes we can use humor when we're doing that, being like, well, they ran away for 2 days, but they came back, or like whatever it is. And like actually talking about some of the positive of that, right? And using some humor, even though we acknowledge it was really scary when they were missing for 2 days. That was scary. And we'll talk about that hard stuff, but it's awesome because they're back. And let's focus on that now. And let's, so like trying to help families kind of just reframe is so important. In almost every single icky, hard situation, there are some things that we can pull out of it where there were some positives we can look at. Another thing too that we help to help families understand is that a lot of the things that they're bringing up in groups that they're extremely frustrated over are due to expectations that maybe are not realistic. And this is kind of an unknown quote out there, but I think it's a good one. Expectations are premeditated resentments. So I talk with families a lot about this, especially when I'm leading groups, about how is whatever the expectation is that when they're talking about a situation that happened and they're frustrated over it, we'll stop and look, okay, what was the expectation that was missed that you're upset about, right? Like the kid, actually just 2 days ago when I was leading a group, a caregiver was talking about how they are just so sick of this. Happened to be their 25-year-old daughter, how they're having to do everything for her. Like she won't even empty the dishwasher. And there's just all of these, huge different, all these, the parent was feeling like a servant, right? And so, and this young woman does happen to have disabilities. And so that's what I was talking with her about, the expectation of, wanting, how most of us go into families thinking our kids are going to they're going to help us as they get older and developmentally can help. And so that's what we had to talk about, was developmentally, where is this 25-year-old at, right? And then also we just talked about the expectations that she had, and about how they might need to have some adjustments in it. And I'm not saying this 25-year-old shouldn't help or do anything. I'm just saying there was a clash there where things weren't kind of meeting up. And so so a lot of times when we are hearing that negativity from a family, as a group member, if we kind of can break it down a little bit and go and start at what was the expectation that you're feeling frustrated about that wasn't, met by your child, and was that expectation realistic? Now, sometimes it is, right? But a lot of the times it probably isn't, depending on the child's or adolescent or young adult's adolescent, developmental profile and all of those kind of factors. So we've got to work on expectations and helping families understand that. I talk a lot about how, when we went into our family and parenting, I remember like a couple of the expectations that we had was, we were going to, sit around and have dinner every evening, and I was going to cook a meal, and we would sit around and talk and be like the Waltons or the Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie. That's my generation, right? And that didn't work. It didn't work very well at all, because of one of our children who just developmentally has a lot, and a lot of kind of brain differences and struggles, and it was just fireworks and a nightmare every night. Not to mention, I realized at some point what a ridiculous expectation that was that I had, because I hate cooking and I am not a good cook. So what made me think I was going to be making a wonderful sit-down meal every evening that we were all going to enjoy? That wasn't even a realistic expectation, right? But as I looked at the world and what the world expects families to look like, that was one of the things that I thought should be in a family. And many families do that, and it works, and that's great. It just didn't work for our particular family. And so I had to kind of come to terms with that and be okay with that. And in groups that I'm leading, that is something that it's like sometimes as a group, and it's not just the group leader who does this, but as a collective group, we need to give permission to a family to let go of an expectation, right? Like even if it's, if maybe it is sitting down for a meal every evening or something like that. Those are things that we should be talking about in groups all the time, and how all of our families do not need to look the same and shouldn't
Barb,
look the same.
I'm really glad that you also brought up, it's not just the unrealistic expectations we have for our kids, but also for ourselves.
Yes.
Right. And that inability
Mhm.
to forgive ourselves
Mhm.
when we can't
Mhm.
do what we always thought we would do, then
Yeah.
turns into resentment towards the kid because,
Yep.
oh, it's because the kid wouldn't let me. Right. I'm
Yes.
so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, there's so much of it about with our caregivers, so much of it is about them and them starting to let go of some of that stuff, them stopping worrying about what their parents or their friends or their family or whatever think about the way they're doing things within their family. Because that's another challenge that we have, is the judgment that we feel from others that are outside of our family units and that kind of stuff. And so just helping families kind of come to terms with that can make a big difference. And then relationship, right? Like this is something at Families Rising that we are extremely passionate about, is trying to help our families, adoptive, foster, and kinship families, understand that relationship is key, and we always want to fall back on relationship. We're going to choose relationship. We're going to choose connection over correction, right? And yes, that can make us feel like we don't have, we're not standing strong, or we're not strict enough. And, there's a lot of judgment that we will get from others. But choosing relationship is what we always want to do. So that's something within support groups as group leaders, you have to do that. And that is something, when I lead groups, I bring it back to that all the time. Like, is that what you were taught, what this parent is suggesting they might want to do, or they were thinking of doing how is that going to impact your relationship with this child or adolescent or even adult? And so that's one of the things that we talk about a lot, and that sometimes it's okay to let go of other things that you were thinking because you're focusing on the relationship. And there's this wonderful recorded webinar that that AdoptUSKids did. I think that was Nathan Ross. I think, Britt, you can correct me in the chat box or unmute. But
Yep.
okay.
You and Nathan. It was you and Nathan.
Oh, it was me and Nathan. Oh, I guess it was me too. Yep, I knew that. Stabilizing placements through relationships. So that's a great one that's on the AdoptUSKids website and YouTube channel that you guys can access as well. So again, the other thing is we can't lead support groups without, and we can't parent adoptive, foster, and kinship children without dealing with discomfort. You can't parent any children without dealing with discomfort, right? But especially with our kids that have experienced trauma, there's going to be a higher level of discomfort and things that happen. And so sometimes when you're leading a group, you know, what I like to ask a lot of questions. And so like you can use these I wonder statements, right? I wonder what's different when it's not like this. I wonder how this has changed for you. You know, I wonder, how do you think your child feels about this, or your adolescent or your young adult? Asking questions and kind of getting, because sometimes as a group leader, you're sitting there and you might have thoughts and ideas and suggestions you want to throw out right away to a family. But a lot of times we can lead them to that information without us being the one telling them, right? And so, and then this is also how we can get the rest of the people that are in that group involved too, is by asking questions. And so think of different kind of questions that we can ask, and especially questions that will help, that can maybe possibly help with reframing, like asking, like, what do you think was going on in your kid's brain or in their body at that moment in that situation? Like, let's talk about that, right? And when we dive a little bit deeper into that and get into what's going on with that child's emotional regulation or in their brain, where they stuck in their amygdala in the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn part of their brain, if we can, when we talk about that stuff, that can bring parents kind of down a few notches to be like, okay, now, and that doesn't mean that it still isn't frustrating, right? And that's the challenge that we have in support groups, is balancing the dynamic of them needing to be able to vent and to get the stuff out, but also to come up with strategies going forward, and also just not having it become too negative and only focusing on that stuff. So that's where, as group leaders, you have to find that balance, and it takes a while, but you can do it kind of with practice. And one of the things that I really recommend is if you can have a co-leader on a group, if there's two of you, and after a group, if you can both sit and kind of process it with each other and be like, what else could we have asked in that situation? Or what could we have said here and there? Like, that can really help too. You end up becoming much more savvy. I used to do that a lot with somebody when I co-presented or co-facilitated a support group, and we would kind of process for 10 or 15 minutes after each group, and it would help us kind of just get better skills for leading groups in general.
I think even without a co-leader though, Barb, folks could definitely do that with like the member of the group that they were trying to redirect. Still keep getting that feedback loop, right? And make them part of the event, of the process.
Oh, absolutely. That's a really good idea. I've done that too. You're right. So like sometimes after a group, I'll send a message to a parent and say, hey, how do you feel that went? Was there any questions that, you know, like sometimes I'll just process it with a parent and see how they're feeling. And especially if they were dealing with something that was really, really, really hard. That's a great idea. So some other kind of prompts and things like that you can use to invite joy and bring that into the groups. Sometimes just if we're feeling like a parent seems super negative about one of their kids or several of their kids, tell me a story about when he or she was little. You know, what was the last kind of silly thing that you guys did together, or the fun thing, or something like that? How do you feel when you look at them when they're sleeping, right? Do you ever go just watch them while they're sleeping and think about it? Like, so yeah, I actually recently, a couple of weeks ago, I was leading a group, and we had a parent on there who was very emotional and really struggling because it was the anniversary. I think it was the 2 or 3 year anniversary of her young adult son's death. And so she was sharing, she was very emotional. It was a really hard thing, but it was a really good conversation that we had. But then when we were getting kind of towards the end of when I kind of needed to, wrap it up and move to somebody else, to try to bring it to a positive place where we could find some joy. I'm like, tell me about your son. Like, what was he like, right? What did he like to do? What were your favorite qualities about him? And she just melted. And she got she had so much joy talking about her son and who he was and what he was good at and what people enjoyed about him and that kind of stuff. So sometimes we just need to ask questions. We have to humanize our children when we have parents who are stuck in that negative thing. And I get that, right? Because some of our kids have really high behaviors that are really, really stressful. But even those children have positive things and have skills and have gifts and things like that. And so those are things that we can ask and bring out. And I'm not going to lie, there's been times where when I have a parent who's like just railing on their kid, and I'm trying to do that and trying to kind of reframe it and trying to get them to talk about some of the positives, where they're once in a while, it's not really common. Sometimes they really struggle with that. And I literally once remember a parent saying, I can't even think about that stuff right now. I'm so mad at them, And so then, kind of my response in my discussion, and I did a follow-up with this parent. I was like, I'm thinking you maybe are you doing any kind of outside therapy? Are you doing, I see you're really struggling and I'm sorry about that. And I feel like you need some higher level supports here, right? Like, let's figure out some other ideas that we can get you doing so that we can get you to a point to be able to see the positive qualities in your kid because they're there. But, and do it without a shaming and kind of guilt or blaming kind of way. All right, this is you, Kim, I think.
This is me, yeah. It's so funny because I just was looking in the chat box and Britt was talking about the fact that people often think that joy is the opposite of sadness or sorrow, and it's not at all. It exists in the midst of sadness and sorrow and grief if we know how to access it, right? I think oftentimes what we do is we try to bury our head in the sand and push that bad stuff out because it feels bad, but we end up getting stuck in a really, really bad place. So that working through the difficulty is where we find the joy, both within ourselves, but also within the world around us. I know when our son struggled with addiction for many years, and he was at one point in the hospital on life support. And one of the most joyful things that I could possibly do was to massage him, his head, his arms, his legs, because that little sucker wouldn't let me give him any kind of physical affection the whole time he was growing up. But the joy that I had in those moments of being able to be deeply connected with him, to know that he knew I was there for him, that was what helped me to be able to get through the difficulty of him being hospitalized. And I think that's a gift that we really can give to our families when we can even demonstrate for them ourselves, or if we can model that for them, that the joy that you find is about being able to look deeper, look past what the event is, and then think about both what you're learning from it, but also what you're contributing, what you're gaining, what you're sharing. Those are the times when things are really tough, are also the times when most often the people that we care the most about are going to rally around us as well, right? So we want to be present and be able to also accept that.
Okay, did Kim freeze?
Did
I
I
freeze?
Kim is not
Britt,
frozen.
can you hear
for
me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I don't think I'm frozen.
No, you're not, Kim. You can keep going.
Okay, great.
Barb, you log in and log back out while Kim keeps going.
Okay, am I back?
Yes, you're back. All right.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
Never mind.
Okay, sorry.
So if you do have up the next screen. So really, when you think about it as well, there are practices that we can do. And I know that there are group leaders that often will do this. They will start out the group with just sort of a couple of minutes of mindfulness, just to kind of get everybody kind of centered. We're here now. We're going to be attending to one another's needs, but we're going to very intentionally think about bringing kind of that stress level down, maybe even imagining taking the stress and putting it in a bucket somewhere outside the door, right? And if you need to pick it up on your way out the door, you go for it. But while we're here, what we're going to want to do is put that aside so that we can take in the care and the suggestions and just the camaraderie of being in the group with people that understand us without us having to explain ourselves. For our kids as well, that can be very powerful. And then tune in with what you're feeling. What's going on for you physically and emotionally? I know for myself, I've got two places where I carry stress and unhappiness, in my shoulders and in my gut. And when I can feel those things happening, I know, okay, it's time. And right now I have a lot of physical pain from being old again. And my husband encourages me every time he's going for a walk. I think you'd feel better. Come on out, come for a walk, get that sunshine. But being in tune and being able to even take those 5 minutes or maybe even 2 minutes to say, for one little brief moment, I'm going to simply be and let everything sit and not worry about what can I do to fix it, right? Because that's a place we all go. We want to fix.
Yeah, totally. My a good friend of mine, Dr. Michael Harris, who I work with him also in a coaching program, and he will teach people in groups to do PQ reps, he calls them, where you just go like this with your fingers. And we'll do that in support groups sometimes. We'll be like, everybody go like this, rub your fingers together like this. And that is a calming, centering thing, right? I mean, there's like the different tapping things you can do too. Like you can even do them in a virtual group. Like that's what's kind of cool about some of those things. Another thing I learned from him that I thought was fascinating from a mindfulness perspective was he was talking about being mindful of where your tongue is. I had never thought about that before, but I have started to think about it now. When I am feeling stressed or anxious, my tongue is touching the roof of my mouth. Like it's the stress reflex that many of us do, as our tongue is going to the top of our mouth. Isn't that fascinating? And now I do start to realize I'm feeling stressed, and I'm like, I think, where's my tongue? And it's pushing up on the roof of my mouth. Like, so just there's all these really interesting things like that. You can even talk about that in groups if you've had, do a mindfulness training and infuse some of that stuff into the groups.
That is fascinating, because I'm thinking of it as well with people, myself included, when you don't realize that you're stressed.
Yes.
You don't even know you're stressed, and then you suddenly realize, oh, my tongue is in that place, or whatever it is that you do.
Right.
Hey, wait a second.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
great. I love it. We'll find your tongue for you and get it back.
Can I interject real quick? Because we had a great question come in that I wanted to ask, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So Tina had asked, like, is there ever a time when someone comes to group and they're just too stressed and you need to take them aside and suggest that maybe they don't attend group? And just she says, I don't know how to say that in a more sensitive way, but maybe some of what Barb just shared would be good to do.
Barb is expert at that.
Yeah, there definitely there has been people for groups where I have, and sometimes even before a group, like if I know one of my families is uber stressed and like things are like they're dealing with really high levels of stuff, I literally will suggest to them that right now I don't think support groups are going to be what you need. Right now you have such heavy stuff you need to be working on. Let's find some post-placement, post-adoption support people in your community, whoever it is, let's find some people that can help you to work through some of this stuff, because right now you are not in a good place. But once they show up, that's a different story. Once they actually, whether it's on Zoom or in person, once they're there, it's harder. So you absolutely can pull somebody aside, during a group even, or whether it's on Zoom or in person, you just kind of like be like, okay, you know what, Britt, let's you and I go out into the hallway for a few minutes. We're going to take a quick breather, everybody, potty break, right, or whatever it is, and talk to and pull that person aside and just really, in a really compassionate, gentle, but yet to the point kind of way, say, man, you are really in the thick of it right now, and I am feeling that, and I don't think being here tonight is going to be helpful for you, and it's definitely probably not going to be helpful at all for other people. So how about you and I connect after group tonight or tomorrow or whatever it is. But why don't you instead take this time and go have an hour alone, or go do some self-care, right? You had this time carved out to come to a group, go do some self-care and let's connect, right? Now, if they're on Zoom or if it's a virtual thing, what we can do is we can try to be sending them a private message through the chat to say that, right? Be like, whoa, dude, so we could do something like that. Now, that the hard thing is sometimes they might not be seeing it, but it's okay even to say while you're leading the group, hey, Britt, check out the chat. I sent you a message, right? And then they'll see, and even in that, you could just say, hey, Britt, I can see you are really struggling. I don't think group tonight is going to be helpful for you or the entire group for you to be at. Can we connect after group? And why don't you just go? Is there something you can do right now for yourself, right? Like make it a self-care thing. Don't make it I'm kicking you out of here, right? Make it, you are really in a hard place right now and self-care needs to be your priority. So can you do something and we'll connect?
The other thing I know you've done in the past, Barb, for the Zoom thing, when you've had a facilitator, is to kick both that person and the co-facilitator into their own room, or you and which is a brilliant way of being able to help them in the moment while not derailing. I think about it all the time, that it just is so much easier when you've got a co-facilitator.
Oh, it is, whether it's in person or on Zoom, because in either of those situations, one person can take that person and deal with them, whether it's going into a breakout Zoom online or a breakout room online, or taking them into the hallway or a different room in person, because maybe that's what they need. They maybe just need that one-on-one support right now, and they could actually stay, but that's how we're going to give them support tonight instead of being within the whole group.
Exactly. Brilliant. I love it. So one of the ways that I know that Barb and I sort through everything that we do, whether it's training or life or whatever, is just thinking about the stories, because the stories that we share help us understand better who we are. They help bring meaning to whatever is happening, but you can learn the hard way. And we did this one time at a weekend-long training where we didn't establish the rules quick enough, that storytelling also can completely derail whatever it is you're trying to do. So, we know that it brings clarity. We know that it helps us understand ourselves better and understand what happened better. We know that the stories can help people relate to us, and relate to what we've gone through. They can see themselves in our stories. But what we need is, as leaders, to model the way to effectively tell a story, right? We have to practice it. We have to model it. We have to teach our members as well. So there's a few things that we always do when we're doing the storytelling piece. Number one is we have a 90-second rule. And that applies to the leader as well. And not only as well, but even more importantly, that 90-second rule applies to us. If you can't get to the point within 60 to 90 seconds, don't tell that story. It's too big. Maybe write an article, right? Maybe do a training on it. But if it truly is too big to do in that amount of time, then it's not appropriate for the support group meeting. It has to be on point, it has to be relevant, and it has to be respectful. Not just relevant and respectful for the group that you're sitting in, but also relevant and respectful for whoever you're talking about, whatever that experience is. Both of us are very serious about the fact that we do not share any stories about our family or about our children, or even about people we know, without their permission, and without making sure that it's not something that they would be embarrassed to hear, right? I think about, and even when I used to be doing a lot of training of young people trying to share their own story, one of the things that we would talk about is, you want to make sure that whatever you tell people in public, or actually in private, during this training, during this support group meeting, whatever it is, that when you see them in the grocery store or out in the community later, that you're not going to be embarrassed about it, that you're not going to be ashamed, that you're not going to feel less than because they know that thing. And we also have to think the same thing on behalf of our children. We don't want people to think less than about our children because of a story that they've heard. So again, bringing the joy into it, bringing the hope into it. The stories should always have some kind of a message of hopefulness. If we're not doing something within that story that's going to help us rise up and elevate, then what we're going to be doing is contributing to that one-upmanship around, oh, I've got a story that can beat that. You think you're having it tough? Listen to how tough I have it. And we also know how quickly you are going to lose support group members when that stuff starts happening. It's not what the support group is about. We want them to be, whenever possible, person first, unless it is something that is about whatever the issue is, right? It might not be about the person, it might be about the issue, but we want to always be thinking of it in terms of what's either the solution or the strategy. What do I need from my fellow group members to try to get through this? And or how can my story help my fellow group members kind of rise above whatever it is that they are struggling with in the moment? That which should be the point of the stories that you tell.
Yep. And fully, that is something I, as we all know, struggle greatly with, is the 90-second rule. I'm a little long-winded. All right. So tactful use of humor. How do we infuse humor into the groups and into stuff? This is something I'm super passionate about, because literally humor has been, for me, the biggest self-care strategy that has helped me to survive the hard times, the really, really hard times even. And so how do you do that tactfully, right? So no joke, laughter is important, right? Literally, like Kim was talking about earlier, how she was with her friends and how they just started laughing and how it actually feels good. Even if there's nothing you're laughing about in that moment, laughing feels good and it helps us to heal. And it connects us, right? It's kind of one of those humanizing things that helps us feel connected to people. And it can take power back from dark and hard circumstances, right? If we get really stuck and just sit and fester in the hard thing beats us, right? But if we're all going to be there for a little bit, but if we can then find the humor, find the joy, find the hope, to get out of that kind of place and to be able to reframe it, it really can help. So laughter heals, right? It reduces our stress hormones and it improves our cardiac health. It lowers our blood pressure. It releases endorphins. It is good for our health to laugh. And so like I remember when years ago, when I was in the midst of some of the really huge crises and tough stuff that we were dealing with in our family, I didn't say this at the beginning. I am an adoptive parent. Probably should have said that part, right? Forgot about that, but I am an adoptive parent. My kids are all young adults now. But for me, one of the things that literally helped to pull me out of the darkness was I started meeting individually late at night, because this was at a point when our stuff was so chaotic in our life that I couldn't hardly leave our house when the kids were awake. So after the kids were all in bed, like at 10:30, 11 p.m., I would meet a new adoptive friend that I had made, and we would sit at a local restaurant and drink Diet Coke and nachos for hours and laugh hysterically. We maybe had some inappropriate language too that we started using a lot, which ended up being a levity thing for me. I'm not saying everybody needs to do that. Like, we just started to laugh so much at weird things and funny things. And we weren't wasn't that we were laughing at our children. We were laughing at some of the wacky things that were happening in our families, right? And it was literally what helped to kind of pull me out of the trenches. Another thing the other thing I talk about, how there's this phrase, turning lemons into lemonade. Well, that's not the phrase I like, because what's wrong with lemons? Lemons are great. So we're just I like making chicken poop into chicken salad. right? Like that's what, let's take the icky stuff and make it into cool stuff. That's reframing in a really, that's a more intense level of reframing. For me though, when I find that I am getting into a place where I'm stuck in the hard stuff and the crisis and the hard things, I've tried to figure out things that I can do that are going to make me laugh a lot. It might be there's a certain friends of mine that I need to hang out with because we laugh hysterically every time we're together and always have fun, right? It might be something like that. But another thing that for me, there's a movie that makes me laugh hysterically, and it's a very inappropriate one. It's the Hangover movies, right? I don't know why, but I have seen it so many times because it is my self-care thing. When I need to laugh, I will sit and watch those. There's a few other like TV shows or movies that also make me laugh. So, but figure out what are the things, and that's something that you can talk about in the group, right? Like sometimes if you're feeling things are kind of heavy within the group, you can stop, and that's one of the questions. You can be like, hey, let's go around and talk about, is there a movie, a podcast, a comedian? Who is it that what makes you laugh really hard? And let's sit and talk about it and go around the circle, right? Because laughter is crucial to finding joy and to feeling satisfied with our lives.
So we also know that laughter builds resilience. And Barb did mention this, but I want to talk more about that because I think that we can get, and I've seen this in myself when my kids were younger, and I've seen it in other, particularly in adoptive parents, right? We have kids that were not born to us, that we have been entrusted with. We know that they come from places of loss. Every kid who's been adopted comes from a place of loss. Many of them also come from places of trauma or abandonment. And the seriousness of our job sometimes gets in the way of us being able to enjoy life, to enjoy the child themselves, to even like ourselves, right? This is a heavy, heavy responsibility. We have made a commitment to help heal a human being who was maybe harmed by, or at least lost, the person who they could have expected, who traditionally we would have thought would be that person. And so when things get tough, we get even deeper and deeper into that sense of seriousness and responsibility and sort of the onus of what we've agreed to do in our lives' work starts to weigh on us in such a way that we almost get stuck in, it's almost like we're in quicksand. We can't even get out of our own way. So I really work very hard, especially for a couple of my kids that have more serious trauma histories, I'll put it that way. I work really hard at being able to show them how easy it is for me to laugh at me. I wouldn't laugh at them. Laughing at them is certainly not going to be the right thing to do. But I show them how much comfort and how much sort of relief I get out of being able to laugh at my own mistakes, how to be able to be silly, how to be able to mock myself and just be a goofy person in the moment so that we can together get past whatever that difficult hump is, right? What I also noticed, and this was so significant for me, especially with my one child who carries the most trauma, she was not able to laugh at herself until she was in her 30s. This is a long haul, folks. This is not like we're going to fix it like that. But the first time that she laughed at herself, you could see the tension just drain away from her. And you could see how pleased she was that she was able to do that, right? It was just so wonderful to watch. So we want to be able to laugh at our own mistakes. We want to be able to point out sort of the silliness in the world so that we're not getting bogged down by it. I think even, I think about even comedians, when things are the most frightening in the world, that is when comedians do the most for us by helping us see the other side of it, because that assures us that we're going to be able to get through it. We're going to be able to get through it together. And I can remember one time in particular, right after 9/11, or a bit after 9/11. I might have been even Jon Stewart, who was on the Daily Show at that point in time. And he almost asked permission from his audience. Are we there now that we can laugh again? Are we there now? Super important to be able to laugh again when you've experienced something really tough. I remember after our son Melvin died, because he did finally succumb to his addiction, the first time that I had a genuine belly laugh led me to start crying, because I felt like I had somehow disrespected his memory by being happy. And fortunately, my husband was there to reassure me, no, 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 don't you know that's the thing that he would like the best, to see that you're okay. You might not be completely okay, but you're moving towards okay. And I think that it's really, really important for us to be able to do that, right? And yes, Elizabeth, I watch comedy stand-up specials all night long when I'm in a bad mood. And I'll just sit there rolling on the floor laughing, and now I don't feel terrible anymore. Nothing wrong with not feeling terrible anymore, right? So how are you going to bring that levity into your meetings when you're having a really tough meeting? A lot of these are the things that Barb has done for years. You know, that whole, hey, what's the best sticker chart or behavior mod thing you've ever used? Because we know universally, if we're foster adoptive parents, that sticker charts and behavior modification do not work, right? So we talk about that silliness. We have people share some of those ridiculous things that people have told us that we should be able to do for our kids, because that's what parents do. You're supposed to do it this way, right? We want you to talk with your groups about those health benefits that Barb mentioned around laughing. We want you to be able to feel comfortable and even practice, right? Practice with your friends. What are some of the stories that you can share in a group that can help bring the tension around when things are really going difficult, right? Making sure that as you're sharing that, you know, ask whoever your practice audience is, have I missed something? Is there something in this particular story or in this funny piece or even in this joke that could be interpreted as hurtful from somebody else? It's one of the things that I have a conversation with my incredibly sarcastic New York humor husband, that if both people aren't laughing, it's not really a joke. It's only funny if everybody's enjoying it, right? So we want to remember that as well. You know, just really thinking about how are we going to continue to look at our approach to humor, joy, and laughter in a way that's okay. And yes, Jana and Britt, every single dad joke is a good dad joke. In fact, I was at a retreat for families a couple of weeks ago, and two of the adopted children that were there, young women in their teens, way too cool for school, finally decided that they could get involved by getting up and doing a dad joke routine with one another. So all of us are good with the dad jokes.
Yep. You know, sometimes what I'll do too, like when a family is, you know, sitting and sharing something that maybe that their kid got upset about, or that their kid blew up, you know, like it was, you know, it can be, as we all know, it can be the simplest thing. Like it's because, you know, we made eggs and bacon instead of eggs and sausage. And now all of a sudden they're blowing up and it's this ginormous thing, right? So like sometimes when a parent is sharing, you know, a situation like that, you know, I'll just be like, what, and I'll be like, well, what a jerky thing. Why did you do that? Or I mean, like, I'll just like, I use sarcasm a lot. I am very sarcastic. And so, or sometimes literally I'll even be like, well, what a jerk. Why are you being a jerk? You know, and then I stop with this deadpan and they're looking at me, and then we all start laughing. And most people get to know you well enough to know that that's just your style, you know, and then we have fun. Or sometimes, you know, even like, you know, if there's something that's going on, I'll just be like, well, stop it. Stop doing that. And then sometimes I'll like, especially if you're doing online groups, I'll pull up a funny video and play it. Like one of my favorite funny videos is this thing of Bob Newhart. It was like, wasn't Saturday Night Live. It was a different show, but like Saturday Night Live, where he's playing a psychiatrist, and it's called, if you just Google Bob Newhart, Stop It. You'll find this video. And it is so funny. And so I'll pull that into a support group because sometimes it's really effective in that moment. And we'll just watch like 2 or 3 minutes or something, and we'll watch this video and laugh. And I mean, obviously, if you're in an in-person, if there's a setting where you could do something like that, you can do it in person as well, or you can just share the link with people. But things like that to like bring that levity is so important. And people are putting some different ideas in the box here too. You know, some of them are watching the America's Funniest Videos, those kind of shows. And you know what else? Like, those are great. That's what we also have to try to encourage our group members to do, that stuff with their children, because it's important for our caregivers to laugh with their children, to find, you know, because again, it's a bonding thing to be able to enjoy something and laugh together, watching a show or playing a game or whatever it is.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, Barb. I'm glad you did, because it occurred to me that another shift that you can help your families with. So we had 6 kids in our family, right? And we all had different senses of humor. So it was really kind of a conscious decision to say, hey, wait a second. Just because I don't think what Tanya thinks is funny doesn't mean I shouldn't watch it with her and laugh with her, right? So we put aside what we want to do, but joining our kids in what they find humorous, super important.
Can I ask a quick question of both of you real quick? Because
Yeah.
we got a question come in, and I want to be really kind and gracious in this moment, because I think that it is one of the things that comes up with the sticker charts piece is that is a bit of an inside joke among foster, adoptive, and kinship parents, right? It's like, have you tried a sticker chart? And I think that is it could be a really bonding and important thing for your group, because we got a question about like, I've never heard that sticker charts don't work, or behavior modification tools. I haven't heard that. And I think none of us are surprised that that person hasn't heard that before.
Right. Oh, yeah.
I am going to put in the chat in a minute. Barb has actually a whole webinar that for AdoptUSKids on trauma responsive parenting, and so she does get into that. So we're not going to answer that here, but I just wanted to kind of bring attention to sometimes what is needed in those groups for foster, adoptive, and kinship caregivers is to laugh at the rest of us, myself included, who don't get it, right? Who don't get it.
Yep.
And to have that insular moment of poking fun at the people that don't get it, like myself.
Right. Oh, because that's a bonding thing, right?
Yeah.
It's bonding to be able to be like, yeah, the rest of the world who are not living and parenting, you know, kids that come from trauma backgrounds don't understand that. And, you know, and with sticker charts too, they do work sometimes. For some kids, they're going to work. It's not all of our kids, you know, it doesn't work for, but, you know, just quickly, the reasons why sometimes those don't work effectively with our kids is many of our kids, because of the way their brains were compromised from their trauma histories, whether in utero or out of utero or both, many of them have something called time blindness, where they don't feel time passing. They don't know what it feels like. And so to wait until they've earned 5 stickers to get a reward seems like an eternity. So that's part of it. But also the reward center part of the brain is compromised by early trauma. And so a lot of times those kind of strategies, those behavior mod things don't work well with kids with trauma histories. Now, if it works, that's fantastic, use it, but most of the time it doesn't.
My favorite funny story about behavior mod stuff is the time I said to Tanya, I know you think the house is dirty as soon as you clean it, but it's because you leave your stuff hanging around. And I will continue to pay you to clean the house, but it is your stuff. And she couldn't see it or understand it. So I took a whole package of Post-it notes and wrote Tanya on it 35 times and put that Post-it note on 35 different things she had left laying around the house. And I said to her, hey, I know you want to use the car, but I wanted to help you understand what I was talking about. There's Post-it notes on all the things in the house that you've left behind to make your beautiful house dirty. So I'll give you the car as soon as you take care of those things. And she came up 10 minutes later and she said, I'm all done, Mom. Can I have the keys? And I handed her the keys because I'm trusting. And I went downstairs and there were 35 Post-it notes on the floor in different places where the stuff had been before, because she's got that concrete brain. I don't know, maybe the Post-it notes were my mess now, or maybe she just wanted me to know where the things were that she picked up. but we had a great laugh about it afterwards. And I learned behavior modification does not work.
I love that story. I actually use that sometimes in groups when I lead groups. I use
You
your
all are
story.
welcome to use it anytime you want.
And I also use that as a strategy. I'll share that in groups sometimes, the Post-it note idea of
Yeah.
because so many of our kids with trauma histories are really concrete and don't get abstract stuff. And so they
Yeah.
you know, so using a Post-it note to help make things more concrete can really help.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great.
Mhm.
Jennifer, 100% your kids. Have fun, girl.
Okay, we're gonna watch this video.
Yeah, this video is great. And anytime you're stuck in a meeting and you just can't move it forward, I recommend you use this video because it's the best.
This is a funny video. It's
Especially
very
when
funny.
people are talking about marital problems.
Yeah, right. Okay, here we go.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. If you would just...
Don't.
Try to see.
Oh, that makes me laugh every time. Their facial expressions, and I love that her sweaters are getting snagged. Just cracks me up. So we ended it with a little brief, fast thing to make y'all laugh, because laughter and humor are important. And now we are going to, what do we have? One more? Oh yeah. What's your go-to way to laugh, right? Even in the tough times, what do you have? Like, so literally that video is another thing that I will watch. Sometimes I will watch that Bob Hart video. I will watch the movies. I like the stand-up comedian shows too. I don't know if people, I know you've already put some thoughts in the box. If people have other ideas of things that you use to ways that you laugh in the hard times, put them in there. Oh yeah, funny memes. Oh, and how about the TikTok, right? Getting on some of those, the funny TikToks or videos that are out there can be fun too. Oh, cat videos, animal videos. Oh, The Office. Yep, that's a funny show too. Face distortions. There you go, Lucius. Yeah, there's lots of different ideas and ways. I think we do have more. What was I thinking? I thought I was at the end. Sorry. Okay. Belonging is another super important thing, right? And that's why support groups are so powerful, is because people our adoptive, foster, and kinship caregivers start to feel very isolated, because some of the challenges or dynamics and things that they're dealing with in their families are not usually the same that the other people in their life who are not parenting kids through adoption, foster, or kinship care are experiencing. And so they can start to feel really isolated and lonely. And so that is one of the most beautiful and powerful things of a support group or a support network, is belonging and finding a sense of belonging, finding your people and that kind of stuff. And that's why it's crucial that we do these groups right, because again, honestly, support groups that are negative and kind of getting derailed like that can actually cause harm to our caregivers. And that's the last thing that we want to do. So belonging is a really important thing, and finding laughter and humor and hope in belonging is really important. And now we're at the question one.
You were close. You were close.
I was close.
It's
Okay.
fine. Yeah, we have several questions actually. And before we get into questions too terribly deep, I do want to mention we're having a peer meeting on this same topic on September 12th at 3 Eastern. I'm going to put the registration link in the chat. So we're going to continue this conversation, and you guys can come and talk about all of the strategies that you guys have and share with your peers, and also, you know, get help with the challenges that you're experiencing. So this does not stop here. You know, we're going to continue this conversation, and Barb and Kim are going to join us for that as well. But one less of a question, more of a comment, but I wanted to make sure that everybody saw it because it was a great suggestion that Bobby shared. It was around like taking the beginning of a group to invite each person to share something about their family since the last meeting that was positive or that they were grateful for. And I thought that could be a really cool way to set the tone and to make sure that that they're finding like encouraging finding joy in small things, right? Like even like, oh, he didn't slam the door every single time he went to his room, right? Like that's positive, even if it's not, you know, the best thing in the world. It's still positive. It's still good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, you know, that's a huge way. The beginning of a group is really important. We want to set the guidelines, the rules, the tone, but starting off with, especially if we have a group that has a tendency to go towards the negative dark side, starting it off with something like that, like let's go around and share a positive thing or something good that's going on, or you can even, it could be a funny thing. Like there's lots of different prompts that you can use at the beginning of the group to set the tone. And then what you can also do is have a list of those kind of prompts or ideas in your back pocket for when if the group is feeling really heavy, pull one of those in and be like, okay, I got a question for everybody. And you ask that question and we go around and talk about it.
That's great. We had a question come in at registration that was asking about how to prevent the group from becoming negative, especially in the way that we talk about our kids. So I was hoping that you guys would talk about that.
Well, for me, when I do hear somebody start talking really negatively about their kids, I try to help them think about how they would respond to the same situation. Because I think oftentimes we expect our kids to be able to be resilient or to bounce back or whatever. And it's usually about something that is a symptom of something that happened before, right? It's not a why did you do that? It's what happened to you. And when we can get our families to put themselves in that same situation and think of it from that lens, it can help pull them back from being so. In fact, a couple of years ago, I did, Barb, your and my quadrant, the developmental quadrant with my husband, because our 37-year-old who really struggles is emotionally 5 years old when things are tough. And just the other day, I showed him that and I said, you know, when she's like this, she's in this emotional place. The other day, she was trying to reach me and she couldn't. She reached him instead. And she told me that she reached him. And I said, so what happened? And he said, somebody was mean to her. She was acting like a 5-year-old. And I said, and what did you do? And he said, I treated her like a 5-year-old. You would have been really proud of me. And by that, what he meant was, I felt bad for her and I sympathized and empathized and I let her cry. And I never once said to her, act your age, grow up, right?
Yeah. He met her where she was at. And that's what we want to encourage and kind of coach and teach our families to do. Yeah, that's awesome. Another thing too, that I will sometimes say to a family when they're being like that is, what do you think that your kid would be saying if they were in a group right now about you and about this specific situation?
Love it.
You know, like, what do you think they would be saying? And so to kind of just, let's be in their shoes, right? Let's be in their shoes. And again, even if the stuff that the parent is, you know, talking about, that maybe it's not logical, right? Because there's not a lot of logical things, behaviors that our kids have experienced trauma have, right? We've got to get rid of logic. That's another thing we talk about a lot in groups.
Yeah, and just to make sure folks are aware, the webinar that I shared, the recorded webinar on helping caregivers embrace trauma responsive parenting, that has a lot of stuff of what they're talking about in there, about the developmental quadrants in there, and meeting kids where they're at in terms of their brain age and their emotional age and all of that good stuff. And it can really, really help as parents, like as folks are talking about their child in a negative way, of reframing that toward, okay, how can we think about this from a trauma lens? How can we think about how their brain has been affected by their experiences, and then give them the grace that we would expect for ourselves if that had happened to us. Jill had a question about, what do you suggest one should do with a person in a group that really believes that they're the expert? I think we've all had experience with this. Believes that they're the expert, and can sort of derail the group with that kind of like hard and fast, this is what you should do kind of advice.
Barb, you're the guru on this one.
So yeah, and I've had that happen even recently, where somebody was giving some advice that was not sound and was not trauma informed, trauma responsive. And, and so that's where we've got to call it out right away. And you just do it in a gentle, respectful way. Like literally, this just happened a couple of weeks ago in a group. And I just said, well, you know what? I actually wouldn't recommend that. And then I gave the reasons why I wouldn't recommend that, right? And talked about it. And then I also sent, and it was a virtual one, right? I also sent then a private message to the person that had just given that advice, saying, here's kind of why I disagreed with you, and they actually were able to understand and were able to see it. Right now, some people would maybe still disagree, but I have had that happen before. And so if it's somebody that's consistently doing things like that, which that's what it sounds like is happening in this situation, and I've had that happen before too. I have, outside of the group, had tried to talk to that person, whether it's right afterwards or I call them up or whatever it is. And, and so you want to, you get in the positive things. Hey, here's, things that I appreciate about you, but I do need you to not be talking about A, B, C, and D, or giving advice in these areas, because it doesn't align with what our organization believes in. And if that stuff worked for your family, that's great, but that's not stuff that we want to be promoting, or, you know what I mean? Things like that. And so it's an awkward conversation, but there's a way to do it where they don't maybe feel too bad. And that's the other thing too, is not every group is the right fit for every person, right? And when I meet new families, and when I'm trying to encourage them to get involved with the support group, I'll always say, and again, in some areas, there aren't many choices, right? So like, and then in some areas there are choices, like in Minnesota, where our Family Rising offices are, and where we actually have a post-adoption support program. We have a lot of groups there. And so what I would say to a family is, I want you to go to a group at least 2, if not 3 times. I really want you to try it 3 times, because it takes at least that many times to really get a good feel for the group. You might have come up and it might have been a night that wasn't like the greatest night. The group didn't go well or whatever, the leader was off or people were struggling. So try it a few times, but you have to find the right group for you. So that's really important too. And sometimes it means you start up your own group.
Mm-hmm.
Do y'all have any advice for folks where this kind of the humor stuff doesn't come as naturally? I know you guys both pretty well, and I think humor comes really, really naturally to both of you. And I wonder if you have any advice of like how you got to these places, or things that they could practice or work on if this isn't necessarily a part of their natural personality, like it doesn't come as naturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say find somebody who is in their life who is kind of naturally funny, and get some one-liners from them, like be like, hey dude, I'm leading the support group and I need some ideas of how to bring humor into it, and that just doesn't come naturally for me. Can you help me brainstorm some questions I could ask, or responses I could even have in certain moments? And so so there is a way, even for people that aren't smart Alex like some of us are, or sarcastic like some of us are. There are ways of finding, of kind of getting more familiar and comfortable with that. But also, again, what you can also do is find a member in your group who is funny. and who has that natural kind of funny thing. And one of the groups that that I work in, there's a father who's a regular attendee, and he is hilarious, witty, funny guy. And he and I will sit and banter off of each other, and the group loves it because it just brings in this levity and that kind of stuff. So if you don't maybe have that, I'll bet you there's somebody in your group who does have that, and you could even give them that role. you could even have a conversation and say, hey, Britt, can you be the person in our group? You know, I'm so, you know, not overwhelmed, but I'm so intentional about trying to keep the group moving and all of that. I would love it if you can be intentional in infusing humor throughout the group, right? So that's another way that you can do it if you don't have those natural skills or comfort with it even.
The other thing that I would say about that is, for me, laughter is hugely important, but also gratitude is really important, right? And I think you can infuse joy in your group through using gratitude, even when, you know, sometimes the situation doesn't call for humor either, right? It doesn't always have to be a joke, doesn't always have to be laughter, but it definitely has to be gratitude, and it has to be looking for the hopefulness. For many support group leaders, really what your role is, you may not be the funniest person in the room, but you may be the person who is able to hold hope for your members when they can't hold hope for themselves. And that is a kind of joy as well, when you can offer that just sort of a kind of a safe space. And they know that even when they're feeling hopeless, oh, but Britt's my leader, and I know she has boundless hopefulness. So I'm gonna know that she'll hold that for me this week, because I just can't do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And as Pat said, laughter yoga is really, you know.
Yeah, I wanted to bring attention to what Pat said in the chat too, because it is like what Barb was talking about. The laughter is what we need. The laughter is what's important. It does not necessarily matter about what we're even like, and you know how, and about the whole laughter being social, it's like yawning, how like if Barb starts laughing, even if it's just in his, I will start laughing, even if we're not, what are we laughing at? I don't know. And it doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And even being mindful as the group leaders of your face and your expressions and your smile. Are you smiling? Are you smiling? You know, and you have to be mindful of that, because I have this one group leader who a family is sitting and talking about all this hard stuff, and she's listening with this ginormous smile on her face. And I'm like, I've been coaching her. I'm like, you gotta stop that. Like, you can't be like having this big happy smile on your face while they're talking about the hard stuff. You can bring that in later. That's, you know, good. But just having, you know, being mindful about your own level of smiling is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then last question before we go forward and kind of wrap up is, how do you get the balance right? Do you have advice for balance between the light and the heavy, and making sure that it doesn't feel dismissive, you know, if we're only talking about Pollyanna, everything's fine, versus talking about doom and gloom all the time?
Yeah. Well, one of the strategies, and I know that in one of our former workshops we did with AdoptUSKids, where we were talking about, you know, facilitating groups. One of the strategies I use often is towards the beginning of the group, I will have everybody kind of go around and share if there's a question or a comment or a topic that they want to talk about tonight. And I keep a little journal notebook with me, and when I'm doing Zoom calls in front of me, or if I'm in person, I have it on my lap. And I write down all of those topics and things. And then I don't just go around the circle or go around the squares in order. I am very intentional about going from light to heavy, because I don't want heavy, you know, and then we'll end with the light or something. Because then you see people start dropping off when you're doing it virtually, right? Like people are like, oh, it's just a big gripe fest tonight. I'm not about this. So that's one thing you can do. Also, you can just, if it is feeling heavy, that's when you stop and pause, and you bring in one of those questions or comments that can bring it, you know, back to kind of a more of a lighter topic, and bring in some laughter and humor and hope. Yeah,
I agree.
Awesome. All right, so with just a couple minutes left, I'm just gonna wrap up here. And I especially want to thank Barb and Kim for sharing their wisdom with us today. If you would move it forward for me, Barb, I would sure appreciate it.
So, yep.
Yeah, so first of all, I know I was throwing a bunch of links in the chat, but we do have a peer meeting on September 12th at 3 Eastern. If you're not already registered, I put the link to register in the chat. And come and ready to learn and to also share. It's more of an interactive discussion. And Barb promised laughter. I just want to, like, Barb promised that we were gonna laugh. So, like, also, if you just need a laugh, we're gonna make sure that you know we're good for that. We could do that. But so make sure that you're registered for that if you're not already. And we hope to see you there. And then also I was sharing a bunch of resources in the chat. I also wanted folks to be aware that everything that I've shared from AdoptUSKids is free. I usually say that at the beginning. I think I forgot this time, but capital F free. It's not a sales pitch. It is a, you know, like, we're federally funded. So everything that you that we're talking about, these recorded webinars, these articles, these tools, we have a full 12-hour curriculum that Kim helped us with a couple of years ago to help us. If you need help training your parent support group leaders, if you have an agency that runs support groups, we have a free training that's ready to go. It has a full script and 5 modules of slides. And so please, please, please take a look at the AdoptUSKids website for professionals. There's tons of resources there. They're all free. And then this is how you can reach out to either Barb or myself if you're interested in stuff related to AdoptUSKids, if you need any sort of if you'd like to talk about how AdoptUSKids could potentially help you with any system-specific assistance, which is my favorite phrase to say. That's a phrase that makes me laugh, is system-specific assistance. But AdoptUSKids does do capacity building. So if you have a need, reach out and let's talk about it. These are some specific things that might be useful to you. Specifically an article that is directly related to this on bringing joy to the support group experience with some tips in there. And then we had a recorded webinar from a couple months ago on rejuvenating your support group that Barb did, of like when your support group gets, we're stuck, we're dull, nobody's coming, or you know what, it's stuck in the mud. And then the one that we were talking about earlier on helping caregivers embrace trauma responsive parenting, I have found that one to be one of the most useful things. And I parent children that are not from foster care, that were born to me. That has changed the way that I parent my children. I think it is something that could be helpful to every single person who cares for kids, period. Teachers, therapists, everybody. And then we have some discussion guides that you might want to use in your group. Tons of these. We have a new one that should be coming out this month. It's not published yet, but it will be on helping parents navigate schools. So yeah, so please check that out. And I hope to see all of you on September 12th. And be on the lookout for an AdoptUSKids evaluation email. And give us 5 minutes of your time to give us some feedback on how you feel like this went. But with all that, I appreciate you guys spending your afternoon with us, and y'all have a great rest of your day. Take care. Thank you, Barb and Kim.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.